All right, hello and welcome to the Cinebums podcast with John and Luke. Today we've got a special episode going on. We're talking about the movie Heat with Justin Stillmaker is on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Justin
being
is
here.
not. Yeah, Justin is not only a filmmaker, a writer here in Los Angeles, but also, more importantly to this show, an avid movie watcher and Cinebum himself.
That is, I think that's fair. I think I would call myself a cinebum. I usually average around like 350 to 400 movies a year. I mean, that's
Yeah,
those are-
yeah. And
Those are good
whenever
numbers.
yeah, usually when I talk to Justin, he plugs that stat
yeah.
as well.
You gotta keep those. I'm down this year. I feel like I'm busy, and so I'm like, oh no, I'm only like 220 so far for the year. That's low.
Oh, see, that's still pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. John and I just did an episode where we were talking about our struggling to watch movies as much compared to when we used to do the show. And so we, instead of talking about the movies we watched a lot of, we talked about the movies we fell asleep to. So like basically movie attempts, if you will. Like, we're still trying, but like we always lose steam in the middle of them, unfortunately, sometimes nowadays.
I'm kind of curious, but I have a movie question. Like, if you make it halfway through, do you count it, or does it only?
No.
Okay, I
I've
was just
no.
checking.
You mean
yeah.
on Letterboxd?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
something
I
like
was
that?
gonna because
Nah,
there's some
nah.
inflated numbers coming around from people that I've
Oh
always
yeah,
that I'm like, I think you watched half that movie. You could have a
it's
conversation about
yeah.
it,
No, it
but
is funny how people on Letterboxd are being like sometimes maybe not totally honest with their numbers because like they actually hold it on their sleeve that much how much they're watching that it doesn't really that they're forging their numbers a little bit.
yeah, like some stuff I don't even put on. Like I watched Heat in preparation for today, and I didn't rank it. I was like, they don't need to see how often I'm watching Heat. This is can't.
I
I don't.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I see. I've relogged Heat a bunch of times in the past few
Yeah.
years, so they are seeing how often I've watched Heat and other movies such as like The Irishman, for instance, which is like one if you're showing you're watching that much, people are like, "What the fuck?" Because it's like 4 hours long. It's like, you know,
Yeah,
but
does
It's
this
not
guy
long
do
enough.
anything? Yeah.
yeah, right. But I don't know, like where did your Cinebum nature began and like where is it now if you want to like go over that briefly?
So yeah, I mean, I grew up watching movies like it was like my favorite thing. I moved around a lot as a kid, and so like I think now as an adult, I'm like, oh, I liked movies because they were consistently the same since I was like in a different bedroom every six
Yeah,
months and stuff.
yeah.
So like I think that's
Uh-huh.
where it started. And then by like 12 or 13, I was like, I want to make movies, and I was like, the best way to get better at making movies is to watch movies. I think if
Tarantino school, baby.
I
Yeah.
do this is like an argument I have with some younger filmmakers, and like I think both are true, but I do think like Scorsese and Tarantino and
Yeah.
P.T. Anderson, they're all watching a
Hmm.
movie a
They
day
just watched
probably.
him obsessively. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the
Mhm.
only way to get good is like to watch a lot of stuff or be like super talented, which I don't quite claim. So that's
Oh yeah. I mean like
Yeah.
movies are their own language, so like I don't know, it's best to just like immerse yourself completely so that's taking up most of your brain, I feel like if you're going to be making them at a high level, which Justin does.
Yeah, thank you. I'll plug myself. I am doing my first feature this fall for a film called The Writer, and you can kind of follow along with that whole journey and everything on my Instagram. Justin Stillmaker is just my name. It's unique enough. I was able to get it for my Instagram handle, and
Damn.
I also constantly am posting about movies. I like the thing I'm obsessed with is like subgenres, like movies that are like either like clones of other movies or
Mhm.
like I've decided Oppenheimer belongs to the great genre of serious men in rooms smoking cigarettes talking intensely. That's a
Mhm.
subgenre, which is like one of
Yeah,
my favorite.
yeah.
Heat almost
Right.
qualifies for that genre of movie, and so I like to kind of explore that as a way to kind of get at what I actually want to make.
Yeah, and I will say after watching The Rider and then after talking to you about it further, I won't like say I saw all this myself, but that The Rider is heavily influenced by and like shows that it is someone who has watched who watches a lot of movies, for
Mhm.
sure. And as you said, like throws a lot of things into it, but also has its own original sci-fi world and philosophy and obviously story and stuff like that.
With that particular film, I'm trying to pull off the Tarantino trick of like rip off
Right.
everything. You can't pinpoint one thing and kick me in the shins for
Mhm.
it. So that's sort of
Yeah,
the
right.
Tarantino approach for me on that one. But
Yeah.
that movie is super, not keep spoiling the subject for today, but like it's super Michael Mann indebted. Like once you're in it,
I was gonna get to that next. Is like how did something like Michael Mann, probably more Thief than today's movie, but like, how did like maybe a smaller Michael Mann movie, how much influence did that hold, and the '80s as well?
I mean, Michael Mann is just like if you're like as a filmmaker who came up through the 80s and 90s, like watching stuff through that period. I grew up in Chicago, especially in the summer. In fact, one of my grandfather's best friends ran like a mechanic shop, like a garage that is in fact the one in Thief. Which I did not realize till I was an
Wow,
adult
that's really
watching
cool.
Thief, and I was
Yeah.
like, I remember this like barber chair in the corner, and I was like, oh, that's George's Body Shop. So like Michael Mann's like approach to the city of Chicago and his consistent use of the word jagoff is just the most it's in my DNA. I can't fight it. And then he happens to make movies that I'm obsessed with because like, he's really good at it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and John, you're a Thief guy as well, right? Like,
Yes, definitely
I
a
remember
Thief
talking
guy.
about
Yeah.
Thief at one point with you.
We for
And
sure
maybe
talked about that, I'm sure, in multiple episodes, including scores and soundtracks.
Oh yeah.
hmm
Tangerine
Yeah.
Dream. Yeah,
Is that
for sure.
Tangerine Dream as well? Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, with Thief, when I had made my short film The Rider, which is now getting turned into a feature, which you can check out the trailer on my Instagram or hit me up in a DM and I'll send you the film. My wife had never seen Thief, and when I showed it to her, she was like, "Oh, I like all these things I was like stealing from just like
This is
clicked
your
into
movie.
place." Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a welder in a garage in Chicago. You're kind of
Right.
you're in Thief territory.
Yeah, and then you have a show called on Twitch called Connect the Dots, which I started watching last
Mm.
week
Oh, thank you.
to prepare for this,
Oh
and
no.
I must say that like it was actually really like so relevant to me right now in my life, like the topic of Connect the Dots, and I'm gonna keep watching because
Oh.
Connect the Dots, for anyone who's interested, is basically about bridging the gap between art and money and that whole relationship, about like making money as an artist and the struggle and the constant kind of battle that is. And as someone who's currently looking for ways obsessively to make money off of his own stuff, I was like, wow, this is like like a perfect topic for me right now, because it's like, I guess that's something that it's like on my mind very
Course,
often.
because you're an artist. Thank you for the
Yeah.
plug. I like, yeah. So the show is on Twitch, but you can watch it on YouTube. It's also then cut up into a podcast. It's called Connect the Dots. And it's like that constant war between art and money. I think every artist struggles with that, and like I think that can be both the fun part of it is like kind of. I
Yeah.
honestly think that's why so many filmmakers like bank robbers, because I think it's how they view
Yeah.
dealing with studios, and like
Right.
that you're the criminal trying to sneak one by, and so
Yeah.
that's the show. I try to dig into that every week in a new way.
Yeah, and I love you use a metaphor often in it where it's like, oh, the people with money, they want the end product or something, but they don't
Mhm.
want to deal with like the person behind it, essentially, you know?
Yeah, you're seeing it with like now with like Barbie. Like ever they're like, oh, we need more movies about toys. It's like that's not what people are responding to. They're
Right.
responding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's the vision behind it, you know? It's
Yeah,
like, I don't know, it's like NBC, they
yeah,
wanted like the money that Seinfeld made, but they
yeah.
didn't want like how crazy Larry David was or something like
Right.
that, you
Yeah,
know?
like
Like,
there's always a push pull. They always want to tap it down. And like, like as an artist, you can take wild swings that don't work. It's all but like, you have that's the only way to get somewhere interesting. And like you
yeah.
can do the same thing, but eventually someone does something new in the studio. Money's like, oh shit, we should do that. And then they try to copy it.
Yeah, and it couldn't be more relevant with what's going on in the city right now. So I think it's like, yeah, no, really good work with it.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see how it progresses further.
Thank you. We'll have to have you on, both you and John.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we went through all your stuff really quickly there.
I'm getting more and more at a pro at it. Like, but yeah, it's my website, justinstillmaker.com. The thing I actually want people to most follow is the Instagram for the writer, which is just the writer film.
Yeah,
as we're slowly putting it
that's
together.
most important because he's climbing the mountain. He's making a movie, so a feature film. Yeah. And you're promoting it mainly. Aren't you said like the distribution for the film is going to end up being in Asia?
I mean, I think we're like, there's gonna be promotion everywhere, but I feel like it will do well internationally. So the film is a cyberpunk action movie that I in shorthand called John Wick in the Blade Runner universe, and but really there's a silent lead character. So like it makes it easier kind of translate. It's got like all that action and sci-fi with like a more practical effects look. But no, like, we're gonna do a tiny theatrical run at some point. Like right now, I can't even begin to think about. It's like one of those things when you're a filmmaker, it's like on a lower budget, you're like, I just want to get the movie made. How do I spend the most money? But you also don't want to not think about like, should we shoot teaser trailers as part of the budget? Yeah, we probably should. We're gonna need all this stuff for down the line, but you're just always like, selling your arm to just get the movie made. And so that's, again, I think that's something Michael Mann kind of I think Thief is the one that's really about like art versus money. If I were to start kind of digging into that.
Yeah, I feel like I think of like Heart of Darkness or something like that too, because he's just there like waiting it out in the island, begging for more and more money, and like just doing business deals overseas.
There's a great I had it as my lock screen for years. There's a photo of him, Francis Ford Coppola, sitting on like a dolly track on the camera, completely defeated, while like helicopters are flying over him, and there's like you're just like, yeah, when it's all your money, which is it's nice to say is not what's happening with my short, but it's enough of my money that I'm just like,
yeah, exactly. It did end up being enough of his money.
Yeah, and but that's not I recently read a Coppola back, and it's like that's not the movie that bankrupted him. It's One from the Heart.
One from the Heart. Yeah, that's what the real one. The real ones know it's One from the Heart.
The Heart, which is probably the prettiest movie I've ever seen. I'm dying to see a print of it one day.
Well, yeah, it broke him because he built that whole sound stage.
John, have you ever seen that one from the Heart?
That's one I haven't. I know Luke, you've told me about that one a few times, I think, but
I've brought it up.
I never see it. Like I can't find it.
It's hard to
find.
Watch,
I think. It's really hard to find.
I was able to find someone in Chicago who had a DVD, and we like kept their DVD for like maybe a year, and then so we watched their One from the Heart enough times.
I think it's eventually getting done into like because like the Blu-ray is not really a good Blu-ray. It's like and it costs like $50, so it's not exactly the problem with that movie. It has the two worst leads. Everything else about that movie is great. The soundtrack, but it has two. He just got it wrong.
He even gets the side roles very well, but the leads.
Yeah, they're just like a wet blanket. You're just like asleep watching them. You're like, it's unbelievable. It's like it's the prettiest images you've ever seen, like on a screen, and you're just ready to fall asleep.
It's kind of cool how there's like the mystique about it, though, that it's hard to find. Yeah. Like there's just so much shit out there now, but there's still some stuff every now and then that it's kind of hard to see. Not many people have seen it. Yeah,
I was thinking about this earlier when I was thinking more about this episode, and I was like, oh, I was thinking about because we're talking about Heat today. It's a movie I've overdone now, and it reminded me of like, John, we talked about The Social Network a couple years ago, which was a movie I before that episode definitely overdid.
You were mainlining.
Oh yeah, yeah, I definitely. And I did what I did for this episode. I rewatched the movie. I rewatched the movie with the commentary. Social Network, I rewatched it with every commentary that's on the DVD. I watched it with like the one with Sorkin and the entire cast, and the one with Fincher or something, like whatever however they divide the two. And so I can say that with both, I'm like very much had my fill of Heat the way I had of Social Network when we covered it then for at least a year or something like that. But I'd put Heat in the category of like where I'm at now, where I feel like I'm as honest these past 4 years as I've ever been on what movies I actually want to watch, what I like. I'm way past that pretentious phase. That was like 5 years ago, and what I want to watch is like, I'm very honest with what I want to watch, and like something like Heat and Social Network, stuff like that is, stuff I can't get enough of. I'll like rewatch it over and over again.
Right.
So I think I know this movie. I'd like to think I know this movie pretty well at this point, but I don't know, John. You haven't rewatched it in. Well, I think you haven't rewatched it in a while, so I'm interested in hearing like what you think of it now compared to like how long ago it was when you first saw it.
Yeah, I was trying to think, because we usually try and talk about what like our first viewing experience of the movie is when we do
first
these
impressions. Yeah.
And I can't remember when exactly I watched it, but I want to say, it was after I got my first apartment after college, and I just remember in that apartment watching so many movies. It was like my first time without roommates, without living with family. I just
your
watched
own one
so
bedroom.
much.
Wow.
Yeah, my own one bedroom in Cedar Falls, Iowa.
And you had a case of Busch Light and a bunch of movies.
yeah, and just a stack of DVDs.
It's the dream, really. That's why. Who needs responsibilities?
Yeah. Oh, it was so great. Yeah, I did. I had a pretty simple job where I got to work from home every now and then before it was normal, and I just watched so much. And yeah, I assume that's when I can kind of picture myself in that apartment watching it. And I remember being pretty blown away, but it was also one that I had extremely high expectations for, because it's a movie you only hear amazing things about. I rarely hear any sort of criticism.
It's a high pedestal movie for sure.
Yeah. And it might have been the first Michael Mann movie I'd seen at like 22, 23 years old. Yeah, and I remember really being just like in awe of it, because I was just expecting, it's just sort of a by the books action crime thriller that I'd seen before, but it was just something different. I just think the characters, there's just so much more depth to it than I can think of an action movie that I really liked at the time too, was like The Town, the Ben Affleck movie,
which is totally like a Heat disciple. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so really just like blown away. And it was this time frame where I was really trying to get into all of these movies that are like really high praise, highly regarded, that I hadn't seen yet. So
I'm gonna have to confess something. So I'm old enough to like, I was like 10, I think, when this came out in theaters, 10 or 11. So I saw it on VHS, which was, I believe, a double VHS.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And I didn't like it because I was like, again, I was like 12, and I was like, this isn't as good as Bad Boys or Die Hard or I was like, I wanted, like, I had heard like great action movie from like my dad's friends or whatever, and so then I sat down to watch it. I was like, well, this isn't an action movie. There's not stuff happening every 10 minutes.
There's only like there's like 3 action scenes.
It is an incredible scene, but like that's you gotta wait a long time. I was like, I can watch something. I can watch The Rock or something.
Yeah,
and it wasn't
fun in your action, not realism.
Yeah, so it wasn't until college that I was like, I should probably watch Heat again, and I put it on, and then it just kind of stayed on through like a lot, like what you're describing, Luke, where you're like watching it, it's on in the background, you're playing the commentary, I think it had come out on DVD, it was probably, or the blue, like it was like whenever it got re-released onto like one of the better formats, I was like, oh, this is the best movie ever made. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's like a similar thing with me. Like, I think I saw it like John was saying, where I watched it and I was like, yeah, this is very good, but like maybe I like there was so much I didn't understand about how like deep the character dynamics go.
Yeah.
And I think one day, like, I had seen it a couple more times and I was like, I think this is the best movie ever made, or something like that. Just was like, I want to know, and I became very motivated all of a sudden to like keep rewatching it and make sure I know everything about it I can. Like it was weird. I was just so drawn to it. When did everyone realize, or when was everyone told that this movie is like The Dark Knight?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I was told, I didn't figure it out for myself, but I think I was
yeah.
told, and then I had to discover that,
Yeah, I definitely heard about this is since I didn't see it until like
So
after
you probably saw it
college.
much
I
after Dark Knight. Dark Knight's way
saw
more in your like world,
saw Dark Knight
probably.
probably 30 times before I
Yeah,
saw
30
Heat
times before
once.
it. So you're like, this is ripping off the Dark Knight.
Yeah, what the? Oh my God. Yeah, this is exactly like the Dark Knight. Yeah. Why don't I just watch that instead? Yeah.
I definitely was that guy telling people, because like by that point I'm older, so like when I went to see Dark Knight in the theater, I was like, oh, somebody loves Heat. It was like I remember like in the moment, like as soon as you like, and then William Fichtner shows up, and you're like, at least he's owning the tell. Like I think that's the coolest thing about movies, is like all the directors like communicating back and forth with their the movie that set them up. And so like I've always loved that Nolan is like very clear about that, and then to make William Fichtner the bank manager at the beginning of The Dark Knight is such a chef's kiss to me.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And it's funny because I didn't know till later, and I didn't even find out on my own, but I like held resentment against The Dark Knight for like not being original. But then I grew to like, especially over the years, I've grown to really love the like I don't know, fun crime thriller Michael Mann vibes of The Dark Knight, and especially how much the opening scene is that Heat homage as well.
You know what I mean, Dark Knight owes a ton to Heat, like 1,000%. But the one it took me for years to catch is that it's actually also chasing Terminator 2, like down to a semi-truck chasing a motorcycle and then flipping it. Like I had never like
the middle sequence that everyone loves is that.
And it was
like that as well.
And I like, and the thing I like about Nolan in The Dark Knight is like, he looked at Heat and was like, I'm gonna try to beat it. And I respect any director who's like, I know this is a masterpiece, but I gotta try to see if I can top it. And like he picked two of the best action movies of all time and went for it. And of course, that's why everyone that's why you watch Dark Knight 30 times, because it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does structurally like have all those Heat moments, but it does its own, like the detective, the through the glass scene is the diner scene, and they're both very well written, like depending on what list you're looking at, it'll be on there as one of the best scenes of all time, depending on which type of maybe movie buff they are.
Yeah, and it's also, I've had the pleasurable experience of showing Heat to people who like go like, oh, this is workers. Like as soon as they see the masks in the truck, they're like, oh, I was like, and like, it's not just like the story and the structure, it's like how Nolan shoots. He's trying to shoot like Mann, and like I think it's
right.
I just
it's not shot like a superhero flick at all, especially of the time that we're used to. Like how like Sam Raimi or X-Men or Marvel's doing it. It's like he's clearly building towards a crime thriller genre with Batman.
I have a lot of Christopher Nolan hot take trilogy, but we should save it for another. I'll come back.
I feel like, see, this is what happens. You go down this, and now we're in the Dark Knight world. But
I'm a Dark Knight Rises guy, just to be clear. That's, I think.
Oh wow, interesting. See, like a lot of people, that's like
that's the most hated one.
Like, that's the most Nolan bottom one that I think people like. Really hate.
Have they seen Interstellar? I'm sorry. Okay, continue.
I actually need to rewatch Interstellar, because from what I'm hearing, I used to hate that movie. From what I'm hearing, it's the best Nolan film nowadays.
So
we'll see. He opens up with, from what I know now from watching the commentary, it's the LA Blue Line train. And I also know from watching the commentary that is the same train at the end of Collateral. I don't know if you know that, Justin, but I learned that today.
Yeah, they're wearing the same suit as well.
There's a lot of cool stuff like that in the Michael Mann commentary. Especially if you're like just a nerd for like where they shot things in LA. Like I know what highway now that Pacino is chasing De Niro after to prelude the diner scene. I believe it's like the 105 south towards LAX or something like that.
That feels right.
But basically the movie opens, there's a and you are just kind of jumped into the middle of a heist being executed Robert De Niro walks into a hospital and jacks an ambulance. Also, from watching the commentary, I now know that Robert De Niro in the scene does not even touch the door. He uses his elbow to, like, he is that thorough of a guy. Neil McCauley is that thorough of a crime character, that he's just, he covers all his bases. He is a very,
he's a professional.
Like, yeah, these guys are pros. Yeah, exactly. Which is, I think, things that you can immediately say is so cool about this movie is that you are just watching guys who are Hollywood actors appear as like very real, experienced, trained crime professionals.
I think the first thing that really pops out in the opening, really 10-20 minutes of the movie, is like, one, like the hyper competency of everybody, which is like a Michael Mann staple, right? But the thing that I was really taken with on this view, and I watched it with someone who had never seen Heat before, just to kind of see what their responses are to things. And the one thing I kept thinking, like, wow, it really doesn't tell you what's happening. Like, I feel like I'm so used to like you are always a like half step behind. You get there fast, but he doesn't hold your hand. You don't quite know why. Like, Val Kilmer is buying dynamite, and like you don't know that's important until 10 minutes later. So he's trusting you to do the work. But like, I feel like if you were to show modern audiences now, people are like, what? Like, like that's the first thing that gets cut. Like, you're like, we don't need this scene, or like, I don't like why. Like, you don't see a call between them, and so like that's what I'm really.
And I've noticed this with movies in the '90s. Like, there is a like trust between the filmmaker and the audience to like that they're gonna figure it out because they actually watch a lot of movies back then. You know what I mean? Like, and they are interested, and they have the attention span and just like mental capacity, visual literacy, whatever you want to call that.
Right.
And like, this movie's just introing a bunch of different people. Al Pacino, who plays Lieutenant Vincent Hanna, is in his bed with Charlene. They're having sex, and he is shown that, and they show in this scene that he is only what he is going after. You find that like in this movie, there's like a lot of little. There's just so many little things that call back to like who these characters are. Always just like little things that represent each character pretty much. And then Natalie Portman is introduced as the daughter, Lauren Gustafson, who has incredible OCD about her father, her real father, coming to visit. And like, it's basically alluded to the fact that Charlene and Vincent Hanna have had each multiple like marriages before this, and it's not going well. This current one is not going well.
I was taking note of like, like there's a thing and fathers are never around in Michael Mann movies. And so my question that is not to borrow from, is like a little unanswerable, is like, does Pacino have kids from another marriage, or do you think Natalie Portman's like the first time he's has a child in his life with something else?
I don't know. He definitely I don't know, he definitely could have. I feel like, but would it matter because he's always doing this,
right? No, like, but it's interesting to watch, like, for him care about this kid, right? Like, where it's a great humanizing tactic, right?
It is.
But in general, like, I was watching it through his character. I was like, well, if he's been married 3 times and nothing about him says he uses a condom, in theory, that guy should have like have at least 1 or 2 children. But the way he's attentive, I've always sort of thought, I was like, oh, that's the first one. It was only till this time around that like I think Mann would have mentioned that he has kids at some point from somewhere else.
Right. This is him like trying his best.
Oh, and I can confirm because I've read Heat the novel, and he does not have children, and it's like he's in it in the like before Darlene.
And I don't know if you and John, I don't know if you know this, but I think Justin and I do. It's that basically all these characters have incredible backstories written about them to prequel all of them, and a lot of that is actually written in the book Heat 2, which is basically a prequel to this movie. So I don't know if anyone's interested in that. Is it a prequel, Justin? Like, it's in the past, right?
So it's a prequel and a modern. So like the book is interesting if you're a Michael Mann fan, because it's really a sequel to all his not like all his movies. So like Val Kilmer's character is kind of the main character in Heat 2, and he's basically Black Hat and a little bit Feral in Miami Vice. So like it really does feel like it's like there's a sequel to those movies, and then we get Vincent Hanna and Neil McCauley's like backstory and how they
he's doing work in Chicago and stuff like that, which is Neil. I think every single character is based off someone real that Michael Mann researched about. And I was watching the commentary today, and there's even like a giant backstory for Robert De Niro's woman in this. Like there's a huge backstory that he wrote about how she's from like Carolina or something like that. And like, which is an area that is known for like, I think, good food and furniture, and also and is why it's influenced for graphic design, all that all that stuff. And that's why she went to New York for graphic design.
Yeah, like so like the other thing about Heat that like you can like, it's Michael Mann's, like he has all that research, all that texture, that why I am very jealous and I would love to do that. I don't have the time or the budget, or I'm lazy to do it. So it is one of the things I love about his movies. But I think the other thing I sometimes watch, like I know when I was a younger filmmaker and I would watch Heat, and it's still like an overwhelming masterpiece, but like he did try to make this movie like 4 times. Like he did it as a TV show pilot. I don't know if you do that, like there's an LA like which I've seen the pilot. It's a friend of mine had a bootleg of it, and it's perverse in that like it is both looks like and feels like Heat, but has everyone in the wrong roles. It's so weird.
And Michael Mann, of course, he started in television, which is so interesting because he's a filmmaker who ended up like having like really at least his movies show that there's no restrictions at all, and he started out in television where there's nothing but.
Until nowadays, it would have been perfect for him to.
Yeah, exactly. This is Michael Mann's era of television.
Yeah, right.
Well, this is you're kind of setting me up. Not even on purpose, but like the thing that I feel is it's not a hot take, but the thing I like, Heat is like this incredible movie that so many people cite and love, and I would say only really Christopher Nolan is the only guy I can think of. There's there's bank robbing movies that like The Town, but like there are very few movies that try to like copy. Den of Thieves obviously is trying to be Mountain Dew Heat, but I think Michael Mann's Heat, its gigantic biggest influence is on television. I think it is fundamentally the most influential movie to television for the run of the great television era of like 99 to like now, I guess, right? Like,
so like name some shows that you mean.
Breaking Bad, Sopranos, Deadwood, Rescue Me. I mean,
the biggest ones.
Because like here's what I mean by that. So like I
think I know where you're going with it.
Because like you basically look at the first 90 minutes of Heat, and it's strings and strings and strings of storylines, right? Like it's setting up, it's setting up, there's setting up, it's setting up the kid. Like we don't need like it's just this big. It's basically Heat is a season of television pushed into a 3-hour movie, and I think everyone watched that and like rewatched it, and it's slowly. And I think it's like, to me, the idea of the dual guy is such a TV concept now of like Justified, Walton Goggins and Timothy, like this like the same flip side of the same coin, and that these endless big storylines of all these different things that are all like you can kind of feel it. It even sort of operates. By the time you're getting to the bank robbery, you feel like you're like, oh, this is about the 9th or 10th episode of a TV show. And then like it makes sense because he saw it. He tried to do it as a TV show first, and so like I think to me like it's really its influence is just like all over television.
Well, you made me think. What I thought of when you brought that up is like I'm thinking of the way HBO specifically was doing their shows. A lot of their best ones too, in which it's so many characters, but you're just
The Wire.
The Wire and The Sopranos, and you're just and how the world eventually connects. All, and it all does feel in the same world. Like somehow they connect them. Basically, like how at the end, how Neil ends up at the diner where the grill man's working, and all of a sudden has a gig for him where he's being abused at that diner. It just all fits so well. Yeah.
You feel, does that make some sense to you?
Yeah, I was gonna kind of go off what Luke said. That's so true. How you, well, like what you said, how there's all these different characters and storylines, and it is, I think, just from watching HBO, you see these characters, especially The Wire, which I've started rewatching. And it's like, who is this guy? Like, why am I supposed to know him? Like, did I miss him from like an episode before? And then somehow they incorporate him into the storyline.
It like trusts you with it.
Yeah, you just kind of have to like just go with it, and you'll find out along the way.
Yeah, and like there's something about like the serial killer on the loose that's also Waingro, and like it just like the more you like the Natalie Portman stand-line, and then you also have the bank. It's like
Van Zandt.
It's like this is how you would structure a season. Like if you were to prepare a TV show Bible, it would look identical to Heat. So the fact that I'm like sort of amazed that no one's just tried to do like a bank robbing TV. I'm sure they have, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But like, it just seems, even the way it's shot reminds me of television. Like television's trying to kind of pull off that kind of cooler blues and grays and whites and like of Heat.
Yeah, no, like everyone has their own little story. Like the grill man is introduced just in the middle of where there's a lot going on. All of a sudden you're like, all right, I guess this guy needs to make parole, all of a sudden,
how's it gonna pay off? Yeah,
right, exactly. But yeah, this eventually all builds to the big like scene where they systematically have a tow truck under a bridge just off Venice Boulevard, and they box it in to just take down this giant like bank truck. They just knock it down, and there's a like really like edgier seat heist begins, where Waingro is like staring down a dude and is forming his own like resentment towards him. And Waingro is actually, I don't even think he was supposed to be on the heist. Like he's just like, they had a guy out, so they pick out a random guy. But basically everything in this heist is worked out. They know they're even counting down the police response time as it's going on. And really like Waingro is the wild card in the whole thing that messes up the perfect plan.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I didn't really realize how much this random character that kind of gets thrown into their mix just changes the course of everything that happens after this in the movie. And yeah, I think that's the thing too. Like I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Luke, because there's so many like callbacks, and I think just watching it more, you realize those things going through. Like even when this is, I'm jumping ahead slightly, but when the detective mentions Slick in the beginning, and then watching it again now, I'm like, oh, they talk about that later. It's just all those small details that just lead to something else down the line.
Yeah, Tom Sizemore says Slick. I love and what a badass trio of criminals. It's De Niro, Tom Sizemore, and Val Kilmer, and then Danny Trejo, who was the one like not official actor. He was discovered in prison, I believe, by Michael Mann, and then brought out for this role, and that's why his name in this is his name, I believe.
Well, that's like, can I let me go
go ahead.
He was discovered like it wasn't Mann, but he was like he got out of prison, he started acting a bunch. He was in fact in a bunch of movies with De Niro in the 80s and 90s, because there's this sweet story I heard Trejo tell about when they were doing Heat. He kept bringing over De Niro coffee, and De Niro at some point stopped him and was like, hey, you're one of the leads now. They get us coffee. Like he had like good jump to level, but he was always like, gangster number 2. And then like it was to like the 2000s that we learn his name. It is one of the weirdest things that he does it, that he calls him Trejo, and like not like it would have been fine if he hadn't become famous, I think. But now it's like really weird. You're like, I feel like you should have given this dude a name, I think.
Right. He has like all these other characters with like very full names, sound like real people with large backstories, and you can tell he's like really likes Michael Mann likes calling Neil Macaulay all the time.
Yeah.
And he calls them by their full names.
Yeah.
Constantly.
I should do that. That's a good trick that he does. Like the fact that I know like so many Vincent. You have to with that many characters, but like Vincent Hanna, like you say Al Pacino's character's name. Like I don't know the name of his teammates but like
No, I don't think you do.
But
Chris Sherilis, Roger Van Zant. Yeah.
But
Alan Marciano, who is played by Hank Azaria. I just realized. Yeah. But yeah, basically Waingro kills the guy, and then that's like and they're forced to kill everyone else. And then later on, Pacino discovered that, Pacino's basically has to go like look at the scene, figure out what they all did. And it's kind of like what's that one? Man. What's that one really broy, like kind of memed crime like movie with Willem Dafoe as the detective again?
To Live and Die in LA? No.
No. It's like not like that.
Are you talking about Boondock Saints?
Boondock Saints, yes.
Yeah,
so I don't know if you remember in Boondock Saints, but like this kind of reminds this.
He's like doing
yeah. And also in Boondock Saints, there's a scene where Willem Dafoe is always like, "All right, here's what happened here," and he like goes through just everything that happened in each crime scene he finds, as if like it's no big deal for him, as if they're not behind, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? The criminals anyways. But that's what Pacino basically does in that first scene. Is just like he just knows everything immediately off of first glance of what went down.
Well, because you got to mirror the hypercompetency, right? Like he's got to be as good. And
he's as good as them, basically.
Yeah, and like his like it's. I was really taken this time around by how like you get that they're obviously both the good and bad guy, right? Like they have their team that's identical to their team, right? Like down to like there's mirrors of almost every character. They go out to dinner, like it's like he's obviously doing that, but it's sort of shocking how much like it cuts back and forth, and you're like to the point that like if you didn't really know who Al Pacino and Robert De Niro are, is that like you'd get kind of confused to like which team this person's on. They all kind of have goatees and kind of talk the same way.
Yeah.
They all have New York accents for some reason.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think like in this, the police are, I don't know. I've always taken this from it. I don't know if you guys do, but it's that the police, criminals are really at the same.
Yeah.
Outside of the killing, outside of the outright direct terrorism that is at the end, the police and the criminals are very much on the same playing field. Like
they know how each other operate and everything.
They complete each other, as they would say in the Dark
Knight. Yes. They need each other to
so.
function. They feed off of each other's action. Like even when when I'm watching the big shootout, I'm always kind of like, well, the police are the ones like pursuing it.
The cops are in the wrong in that shootout. Like there's just
like, they are creating the war zone. Like they could just let them go, and you can make the argument that the police are responsible for all. The
I don't think it's that. I think they'd all. Vincent Hanna has lost his job. It's like you let them leave with the money. Like the money's replaceable. Like human life, they kill like. Again, it's one of those things I think about all the time with action movies, because like I consider myself like that's the thing I'm most interested in is like horror and action, and like the key to a really great action movie is you have to kill a lot of cops. I think the truly great action movies really, and I think that says something fundamentally about action movies. While they're often about cops, I think the best ones are also kind of know that we want to see the thrill of the cops all getting killed. So. Great action movies are ACAB, obviously.
And the character gets to say, "You know how many cops you killed today," that sort of thing. Yeah, it's their stories side by side. Like De Niro's planning the next job, he meets a girl, and then Pacino is like fighting them out, and he's going into criminal underworlds like constantly and acting as more street, while like Neil Macaulay acts very like, I don't know, like. Maybe not sophisticated, but
reserved,
like maybe very reserved. Yeah, because he's trying to be smart, and I feel like everyone Pacino's talking to is very out there criminal, unlike him, and so
I think now is the time to talk about the most important thing that comes out, I think, within those after you first meet Al Pacino on the crime scene that I think is a disservice. It's like, I think to me, one of the things Michael Mann does wrong in the movie, if I can point to one thing, which is everyone talks about Al Pacino going over the top, at certain points. And certainly throughout his career, he's done it. But like, there's a bunch of instances in Heat. They're kind of my favorite scenes. Right. But like, from the commentary, him and Al Pacino decided that character was doing cocaine.
The chipping cocaine line.
Yeah. And I feel like knowing that, like having a moment in the movie where we see him do it would explain. I think for years people were always like, why is he screaming?
Yeah.
Like
there's a confusing performance out of it because of it. But like, yeah.
John, did you know that about the performance and the character?
No, I didn't. Yeah. That's
if you watch, say, like Heat this many years later with old Pacino and De Niro, like there's a big famous like soundbite where Pacino's like, I decided he was chipping cocaine. That's the only way he could be like this, pretty much.
And it's kind of like I've known through like I've known vice cops who work overnights, and like they all kind of have to, because like you're basically chasing down criminals at the height of the only way to kind of function through that is I think that's such a high burnout in that job, and that I always really appreciated that line it's a little later when like De Niro's getting like the file on Al Pacino's Vincent Hanna from like John Voight, and he's like, does it seem like a guy who's staying home at night? Like,
you think he likes to stay home? Yeah.
And like one that thematically works, but also two, it's like because he's just not nonstop roving. And I think but I do feel for years the Pacino's performance was for like the showdown that the movie's supposed to be like, it is like, I think you can't undersell what a big deal them sitting down to have a scene together was probably in 1995.
Right.
I think Pacino's like, as a Pacino defender, as the better actor, I feel like he's a little hamstrung because half the audience doesn't know he's decided the character's doing a ton of cocaine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it creates these very weird, just these weird scenes where he makes these choices that you don't understand. He'll just like talk like strange or with a different tone to try to like match like the criminal he's speaking to. And actually I feel like his performance can be just a reel of great comedy scenes because of this choice. And there's he's got a great ass, or give me everything you got. And
the one I shout a lot, and actually for once had a setup in my life, I was so happy. I was like, I had coffee with him half an hour ago.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, why? Like, what a wave of energy.
And it's literally the first scene he's meeting with a criminal, and he's trying to meet with his brother, I think, or something like that, who eventually tells him about Slick. And and he's like, he's holding back on him just a little bit.
Give me all you got.
Like, give me everything you got. And I'm like, it's like, whoa, it's just like so out of nowhere.
The editing on that's pretty wild too. If you having watched it enough times, you're like, oh, they were matching different audio because they're cutting to his over the shoulder in a way that I don't think would have been as cross-cutty as he is, because like he's probably doing something different in every take because he's Al Pacino.
He wasn't ready for that specific thing.
Like, because it's clearly shot with 3 cameras, and he's like doing this and moving around, and then like you can tell they're like kind of jumping all around just to kind of cover his insane performance.
And then my favorite Pacino, I think my favorite Pacino line is always when he says like the postmodernistic bullshit house, but you can't watch my television set. And he's just like, he's telling the guy, sit down.
A guy that recently, a friend of mine texted me and was like, you know who you look like? And I was like, who? And they're like, Ralph from Heat. And I was like, I'll take it. Xander Berkeley.
Oh my God. Wow.
I'll take it. There's worse comparisons. No, it's because like I don't know, like I think Pacino's, I think Heat doesn't work if he's not like it's the yin yang, like if he's gonna be that, if De Niro's gonna give that performance, then someone else has to bring life, or it does turn into a Christopher Nolan. Like, it's why the Joker performance makes sense, because it's kind of the Al Pacino performance, right?
It weirdly is.
You need that wildness in there.
And then I don't know. De Niro's is totally something different. I think maybe I think I might prefer it, just because I like the subtleties of it a lot. And I think this is a De Niro movie where he's just gets to exude his brilliant badassery as much as possible, like maybe with like this and Jimmy Conway or something like that. But I think like De Niro's great at like being like reserved and doing things like doing simple things like telling Val Kilmer's wife like get cleaned up, go home, get cleaned up, go home, just some stuff
Assuming they
that's
have our
so
cars, assuming they have our plates.
yeah,
It's
right,
like
right.
it's the classic De Niro performance as well. Like I think that's the other thing. Like they're both doing a inversion of their own cliches. Like there's not that much difference between Jimmy Conway and Midnight Run and Casino. And this is why I've always been more a Pacino guy, because at least there's a certain variance, but there's no denying how great Robert De Niro is. Like
and I was talking about like I remember I was talking on one episode about man, I can't remember films today. The Hoo Ha movie.
Son of a Woman.
Son of a Woman. I was talking about that, and I was like, I remember saying like, oh man, like it's just Pacino is always like kind of doing his thing. He's always like kind of good, but like when he's in, it depends what vehicle he's in. And in that movie, he's in a very like just kind of confusing vehicle, but in Heat where it works for him or something like
Devil's Advocate.
Yes, or like De Palma's movie he did. Like that's the right vehicle for him to do 90s Pacino, you know.
It is like I think a lot because like I think Pacino got stuck somewhere like in the like after Scarface, and then the like it's sort of like the bigger than life, and I think Al Pacino likes cocaine himself. But like De Niro also sort of like stays in this repetitiveness. It's just not as noticeable. Like I mean, to me,
right? Because it's not out there. It's not as aggressive, you know.
Like I tend to like the performers that are willing to do something a little more and take but it all depends on the calibration of the movie, right? So like I think Nicolas Cage is one of the great actors, but you put Nicolas Cage in the wrong movie, you're like, what is he? Why is he like this? And so, but then you put him in like Al Pacino in Heat, where this whole world is huge, and it totally kind of makes sense. But like you're saying, like instead of a woman, it doesn't work. But like he's such a fascinating actor to me because like he sort of comes up to doing the reverse. He's doing this like inverted slow. I mean, like Michael Corleone is like a guy who like shows no emotion. Like
well, he's almost doing Neil McCauley,
right?
Michael Corleone.
Like De Niro comes up doing Taxi Driver, and Johnny Boy and Mean Streets are these like very wild
crazy
cards.
and then they almost
flipped.
came. They did flip. Yeah.
It's like cocaine came out around that time and they chose different paths.
De Niro started with cocaine, and then, Pacino ended with it. Both of their runs.
They also both played the devil, which I think is kind of fascinating. So
which is De Niro's devil?
Angel Heart?
I've not seen that.
It's okay. It's a slow burn devil, which is why Pacino does the better devil. But
slow burn devil. But I love the scene where De Niro's he's at the bookstore, and he's like a book about metals. And the book is called, I have it written down even,
Stress Fractures
and Titanium. Stress Fractures and Titanium. And,
I mean, the nice thing about my age bracket is like Heat at a certain point became a movie for men in their 30s to quote all these like bizarre, because like there is all these like really like weird little moments in Heat, like the fact that like he's like when she like kind of expressed interest in him, he's like, why do you care what I do, lady? It's like
why you care about what I read or what I do? And he's like,
so like
he immediately thinks he's being like attacked or someone's like spying on him or something like that.
I do love that the scene, like I think it's right after that, is like they go to his deck and are just staring out at like LA, and it reminds me of like little kids looking at the stars. Like one day I want to go their planet. I'm gonna go, and like they're never gonna get there. There's like there's a real innocent. It's like because like Neil McCauley is like, in theory, he's like the same character James Caan plays in Thief. So he's like been in and out of a prison. He's never really he's never felt love. He's never had, and so like there is something childlike about him that they kind of hide really well in Heat. But I do think there's this like
it's
really
like when
competent.
He finally is a person.
Yeah,
when he's not just planning crime. He's back to like a teenager pretty much. Dude probably hasn't had a girlfriend in God knows when, because he's the no attachments guy.
I feel he's a lot of escorts and prostitutes kind of guy. I feel
exactly. And he's like, hey, don't look at what I do.
Which is also why I think this movie, particularly for men of a certain age in the early 20s, like really, you're like, oh yeah,
ones who are lonely just because they're lonely.
John, you were describing being at your house, like a home in Iowa, and just having movies. You're like, in your way, you're living the Neil McCauley life.
One of those guys.
We are one of the same.
I'm sitting here going, I have a great life, and I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool to just have a shit apartment again where I just watch movies all day.
Man, I wish I didn't have all this nice furniture.
I wish I didn't have an amazing wife and cute pets and friends and make movies. No
attachments.
I should clutter this place up a bit more.
No attachment, so you can't walk. Yeah, it also is a movie that says the movie in the title, which for a great movie that rarely works. Like like when you feel the heat around the corner, like they actually say it, which I think doesn't always work in movies when it happens.
No, because that line is just very well. It's just great writing, 30 seconds flat till you feel the heat coming around the corner. And Val Kilmer, of course, he's a degenerate gambler who just cleans all the money he does from heists out. And then he has his wife who's kind of trying to level him up and I guess actually save some of that money. And basically he, unlike De Niro, is like very attached to his wife, who there's a backstory on how they met when she was a prostitute in, I believe, Las Vegas. I think.
Yeah, that comes up in Heat 2 as well, a little, like her, like he tries to read, like she's back in Vegas, I think. One of the weirdest things, because again, Michael Mann's not a human, so he doesn't know how humans work. But I mean, that says
he's trying to figure. He's trying,
right? Like, with sincere love is he says he bet on the Super Bowl. No gambler ever bets on that's the most lopsided game almost, especially in the 90s, like ever. It's so insane.
Like one other thing I forget, like the two biggest things you could
no one bets the Super Bowl. Like everyone bets it in that, everyone puts $20 on it, but you don't go all in on a Super Bowl game because it's like the most and
idiotic thing.
So I was like, it's just a really bad game. But it's like, Michael Mann doesn't know about sports betting. Like, that's not his thing. I can't pitch. Or he got really into it. He's into horse racing, as we know. But that's one thing that every time I'm like, bet on the Super Bowl, it always catches me. Like that, and I always try to figure out how close that house is to the Boogie Nights house, because I feel like they're in the same block.
You mean Kilmer's house?
Yeah, Kilmer's house.
That strikes me as a Valley pool house.
Oh, it's definitely a Valley pool house.
Yeah. And then De Niro has like two houses. He has the house that overlooks Los Angeles, and then the Malibu house.
I think that
is that her house above Sunset Plaza?
It's her.
That's her house above Sunset Plaza. Okay,
that's what I've always viewed that. But it's like, wow, she affords that on a bookstore. Man, the 90s were.
That's what I'm saying. She's like, it's just when I rent out. Yeah, like.
But I guess if I can go off plot, I think one of the things I truly adore about Heat, and I think it's one of those things where you start to don't realize how it's like. I'm sure you know this from the commentary, Luke, but that movie, it's 75 locations, and Michael Mann went to his scouting team and was like, I don't want to see one location that's been used in a movie before. He's
wow. Yeah, I didn't know that, but that this is does feel like underworld, real LA, the side that you don't want, the non-rich, non-glamour side that they don't want to see in the movies, opposite of Entourage type thing. Everything's industrial, gritty.
Feels like a city, not like some, magical place where people's dreams are coming true or being
and
shed.
I think that's the addiction I got from Michael Mann. Like, I love shooting industrial. If you see my show, I love shooting industrial spaces, wastelands. Like, the like ugliness is the thing I feel most inspired by. But like, as I think about this movie, like everything's like a freeway, the airport, empty warehouses, skylines. They're all places where nothing stays. Just like they're constantly in motion. There's no settling.
Right.
Their airports take you, warehouse,
it's an on-the-go thing always.
Yeah, and so the characters never get to rest because they are always in motion, and I think that's and I think that's sort of like the Michael Mann, like that's kind of all his movies. Like that's like the overriding like point is that we meet Neil, he's on a train, Al Pacino is in stasis when we meet him, and by the end, not right. And
there's always those great over the shoulder shots where they prop it over Pacino as he's pulling up to another place.
Yeah,
and it almost gives it that like we were saying of the cocaine energy. Just like all right, we're back with Cocaine Driver over here. He's at another location.
Yeah, it's all because they're all the characters are forever in transit, right? You're never stuck. Like, you don't want to be stuck. The biggest fear in a Michael Mann movie is that you can't escape, right? So like,
I really was thinking about this from my perspective too, because I was noticing this exact thing, and I was like, God, man, like being that I have had days where I'm just doing nothing but driving in LA, I'm just like, this just looks so exhausting. Like Trejo has to he's been trying to dump his his tail, and now he's got to take them to Ventura or whatever. Where is he going to go when he gets there? All that stuff.
There's also like a running, I'm not the first person to pick up on notice this, but like there's a running theme through all of Mann's work of like one obsession with water as a thing of freedom, right? Like people are always staring at water, right? Because it's the opposite where they're, but everyone's always trapped in an aquarium. Like, so Neil's house is an aquarium.
Yeah.
Charlene's house, or like the one Pacino lives in, is glass everywhere. The police precinct's room is an aquarium. I was trying to think if there was any more. Like, I would even say Trejo's house at the end with all the windows is like like the banker's house is definitely all everyone is stuck in their aquarium staring at water. Is like, that's why I think Heat is like this, like the ultimate Michael Mann movie, because it's like we're watching all these fishes in different tanks.
Yeah,
trying to see if they can escape.
In Collateral, Jamie Foxx has the
island
top of his cab.
Yeah, Insider. Al Pacino walks out into the water to try to like save the guy, Russell Crowe, at the last second. Thief and Manhunter are filled with it. Like Manhunter, he lives on a beach, so he's dragged back, and then he lives in all these glass places. He breaks through the guy. Like, they're always like, that's the stuff that as a director I'm fascinated by. I was like, how much is he aware that he's doing the same thing, or like how much do you know, like,
subconscious, what he likes?
So like the guy who edits a lot of my short films is probably a bigger Mann obsessive than me. Eric Marsh, who I think taught.
He's a DePaul guy. Yeah.
And he pointed out, he's like, I love that all your movies end the same way. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he just like pulled up the ends of all three, and they're all like industrial landscape standoff. And I was like, fuck. I was like, I'm never actively thinking to end that way. It just keeps happening.
Yeah, the couple of short films I've made, there's always some bummy guys on the couch at one point. Every single one has some guys on the couch.
You're telling your truth. You're real. You're
exactly.
That's just Cinebum is what that is.
It is. It's back to that. It's back to this. It's all
ties it all together.
Yeah. Me and Luke, there's a short like Luke wrote for me that I want to direct soon, and like the first thing I said, I was like, let's drain the pool. Like, I was like I'm always just like,
no water.
Like, no water. Can we take something that was like set around there's like a pool in it, and I was like, let's empty it, because that's uglier and grosser and true, and like it hits like I think that is what, like
you were saying, like you're interested in like seeing the real the non-pretty parts.
And I think that's such a Michael Mann thing, but it's also such just like, I think that's one of the things we love about Heat, is that it looks like, again, like TV looks more like our life. Like, I think movies are often aspirational, where TV is certainly trying to sell aspirational, but tries to look like our life.
Definitely. Like, we're back to the HBO shows and everything we're saying. So I guess where we're at now is like we can go to where the police have finally identified some of the crew, and they're watching them get out of dinner, and they're like, oh, that's Chris Shirless, you know, that's Michael Sharito, and they're going through the backstory of everyone, like he did serve time here, did gigs here, blah blah blah, and they identify everyone, but then they're like, who's that? And it's De Niro, and they have nothing on him because De Niro's just basically been such a ghost, and he's like, we got nothing on him. He's like, well, get on him.
Yeah, that's that has like one of my like that's the classic, because like right from there they go to the cops are at dinner, right? Like it's one of the weird like time jumps in the movie.
Yeah, it is. It's a very similar scene for sure.
But I love like all the adoration of like Pacino at De Niro. Like I like the one I like to quote all the time is like, their MO is that they're good. Like that's
yeah. Is that they're good.
Yeah.
Once they yeah.
I say that about other filmmakers all the time when I see their short. I was like, what's their MO? They're good. Like,
that's good. Yeah. I love the fact that they're just through the, you know, the cat and mouse tale that begins it, they're just impressed with each other, you know, and how the slow discovery of how they know that the other's like very good, and how it ends up being this like, I don't know, fun game out of it.
Oh yeah.
They respect the game.
And so basically then they get to that scene where they're watching them through the trucks, and the guy, like, you know, bumps, you know, he just sits down too hard. De Niro is like so alert that he notices that there's something iffy about the trucks, and he's like, we walk, which it kind of reminds me of actually like I don't know, like say you're on set or something like that, and you're on take 4 or 5, and you're the person who makes noise and the sound person, and everyone gets mad at you or something like that. I don't know. I guess I took a lot of like film freelancing I related to a lot of watching this movie again. I don't know. It just
all movies are about making movies. There's no,
in a way that I really felt that, because you feel like you have a team, you have a crew, you're like Waingro is someone that no one knows who came on because they just had to get someone that day. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, if this job goes well, I'll work with them again. You know, that sort of thing. I just really related as someone who's done film freelance.
That guy's a key grip if I've ever met stuff. One. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. He's got his vape and
I think I like. It's definitely always about filmmaking. It's one of the things I think Nolan didn't realize that he's taking from Mann, because like I think Nolan is like the guy who makes the most movies about filmmaking. I mean, Oppenheimer couldn't be more clearly about
that is the writer's room of the nuclear bomb right there.
There's that line in Oppenheimer where they're like, you know, like you're a great improviser, but you can't do it all in your head. And I've had ADs shout that at me. Like it's like I was like, okay, that's like, I was like, yeah, you're right. This is, and like, you know, Inception's very up, but like I think Mann is definitely
Inception is the most like, this is a filmmaking thing too.
Yeah. But like you're right, like, you know, they have these plans that he's like, you know, very precise. We want to do it like this, and then like there is something about that guy knocking it over that feels very much like just annoyed at like the boom mic operator. Like
like, you know, that the whole police force is pissed at that guy. If like they weren't, if it was on Neil's end, they would probably they'd probably just punch the shit out of him. You know, seriously injure him.
It also has that beautiful like close up from the heat vision staring right at Pacino's. It's like, it's one of my favorite just like cinematic big moments, like just,
and it's almost like they're looking at each other for the first time.
It is.
Pacino recognizes that Neil's noticed, basically too.
It's one of those great, like, and again, it's a scene that like shouldn't be that interesting, like we've seen the scene before, but like it stops. He builds a poetry to it. He builds like with them staring into each other's eyes for the first time. There is that just like awkward chance of like, oh, the fucking the guy bringing, you know, the key grip was telling a story and sound picked it up, and now that beautiful take is blown. You know, like it's that's a really good call out. I like that.
And there's a great shot of Pacino. It's one of my favorite shots, I think, of the movie. It's when Pacino gets out of the truck after it happens, and he's just kind of walking around, looks so exhausted from this whole thing. and the light is so great. It's like, I think sunset or sunrise in LA or something like that. And then he just kind of tosses like his walkie or something to the other dude, and he's like, back to work. I love that moment.
You know why you love that moment? I've thought about this because I love that moment too. That is the exact moment of someone who stayed up too late to watch a movie till 4 a.m. and saw sunlight coming up. And we don't throw a gun; we just throw the remote, and we're like, "I guess I got to go to sleep." Or start.
It all comes back to our own lives.
No, like I don't think that's what Michael Mann, but like that moment always feels like me watching Heat till 2 a.m, going like, "Why did I stay up so late?"
Right.
And like
you're
kind of tired, and you're like, I think because it's that beautiful, like it's definitely early morning. It's such a great shot. Like it's one of my favorites.
I think the next big scene is they're in that industrial barge area.
Yeah.
And
the
that's
Wire season 2 area.
Yeah. The docks area. And then it's the misdirection of like of the We Just Got Made scene.
Yeah.
Which is another one of my favorite scenes, and like especially the music drop. The music drop as he's taking pictures of him, and Pacino's just like, haha, and just like pointing out, very good. Like
what they're looking at?
Police department. Yeah, LAPD.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time. We skipped over in between that has the ultimate Tom Sizemore moment. I think.
Yes, of course.
The action is the juice.
Yeah. He's like, do you know? Is this the best thing to do? Is this the best thing? And he's like, you don't have to. You have plenty of good finance. You're doing very well financially right now. You don't need this. Like, I think that's what makes him different. He's very honest about it. Like, he could use Sizemore, right? Like in this, like he definitely needs.
I think that's really true, because I think about that a lot with like, I was like, wait, so he's more put together because it's like, why are you here? Like every time I think about being a criminal, right? I'm always just like, yeah, but then it's because it's like it's addicting. Like like you could just save your money and have a job and you're like, no, I gotta make my short film. And I always think that's like the action
the action is the juice. It goes back to connect the dots. You could almost use that as a tag for connect the dots.
Well, and it's also, as other people have pointed out, that there's this Tom Sizemore, who I think is one of the great character actors, R.I.P., passed away this year. He takes, I don't know, 25 seconds of a long pause between, like it's the ultimate, like, look at me. I'm opposite of De Niro, and he like takes that long pause. Yeah. Like he I
am this reckless, like crazy motherfucker, basically.
It's just such an actor going, the camera's on me. I'm gonna take all the time in the world to do this.
Yeah. I love this moment so much. Yeah.
The back to back of those, and then they're like, all right, motherfuckers. When he's like, it's like that. I quote all the time to myself for no reason. No one knows what I'm quoting, but.
And then Trejo's just like, let's do it.
Welcome,
and Sizemore just laughs. Yep. And then they do the briefing of Pacino and with Jon Voight. Where he's doing the backstory on him, and I don't know. I guess at this point we should just kind of skip to the diner scene, probably. Because that's the next big scene, unless there's a scene in the middle that you guys are interested in. But that's the next one I think of.
I mean, it's the diner, like it is. There is that like kind of, this is the lull right before everything's gonna heat up.
The storm. Before everyone goes to war. I think when people bring up this movie, one of the first things I always hear is like, oh, the diner scene's so good. Everyone just loves the diner scene. And so do I, of course. Who doesn't? And it's not just because it's these two great actors, but also I think they're in like, this huge, really like, I don't know, strange stopping point in the movie where they're allowed to do something different than they've been doing already in the movie, where these two really like different personalities, but also very similar men are like able to connect to each other. And I think it's like also where like the movie can stop and you're like, all right, this movie's like really more, where everyone realizes this movie's really more philosophical than they realize, and how philosophical it's being. where these two guys are just like, oh, we're the same, you know, like where they finally realize it. And I think it's the biggest things where they give themselves that stare when they're like, after they say, you know, like, I don't want to do anything else. Neither will I. Neither do I. Or they'll say, I will not hesitate, you know,
Yeah.
like after that scene. And they just both realize that they're the same type of guy. And then they share these dreams they're having.
I think the dreams is I got a lot of thoughts about that scene, but like I think having them talk about dreams is such a clever way to like there's all the weight of history of cinema of these two sitting down, but also just the move. Like if it was just like kind of a tense showdown, it would be boring or just
yeah. The fact that it's so I don't know, he even like there's tension as he's chasing him down on the LA freeway, and you know, Neil has the gun pull out, but then he's just like playfully like, let's get a cup of coffee, you know, blah blah blah. And he's like, it just shows like the two men are bigger than that, and that like this meeting's about much more than that. And the whole sizing each other up factor, having a real conversation, like you never wanted a regular life, barbecues and ball games line. And
it's such a good scene. Like, well, something I didn't notice till like is so the barbecues and ball games is like one that everyone I think quotes a lot. But like, did you ever notice when they're shooting at each other in the supermarket parking lot, he shoots up a barbecue at the grocery store? It's like all this
like, no, I didn't. That's funny.
And I that was something I didn't catch till like the 500th viewing, and I was like, I bet you that was intended.
I
like
think I need to watch the movie more then.
The other thing I was gonna say is like the little bit of payoff that he finds out he has a woman, right? Yeah. Like a dinner, and then that's how at the end he realizes that like the woman sitting by, like that's I think what Mann wants you to make that connection. I only know that because of the commentary that like you see at the end. You know, I'm jumping ahead, but like that, like. That the whole point of sitting down was that they get some tactical knowledge on the other, right? Like that's, but it really, if I may say, a theory I have on all action movies to some degree are love stories between two men. And they don't know how to process that. I think that's why, like, you know, like they're so like the guns is fucking, right? Like that's like a very like the shoot punching.
Yeah, like
is
John
kissing.
McClane really loves Hans Gruber. You know?
Yeah, like I think the best action movies sort of function, and like Heat in particular, you could recut it as a rom-com. They have a meet cute at the job. They like, you know, they're like tracking each other. Their friends like them together, and then they sit down and they have this really nice date.
And Jon Voight says like. He's got a thing for you, apparently.
Yeah,
says you're good at this and this and this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, like I mean, it runs through all action. Like I'm gonna fuck you. You know, like it's in everything. And I think it's like now more and more people are recognizing, because I've always felt like musicals and action movies are basically the same. Like if you can't, like the rule has I remember from film like being taught was like if you can't, like say it, sing it. Like if you can't, and then if you can't sing it, dance it. And like really action was like I can't say my emotions, so we're gonna shoot at each other or fight, right?
Fight yeah.
And so Heat has this long wind up, and then they give you this moment. You're like, oh, I need them to be together again, and then it's gonna not be how you want, right? And like, I don't know, I'm like that diner scene. I don't know if I can even like add anything to John. Like, how did you like? Is it one of your favorite scenes in the movie, or your favorite, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the diner scene. Just Pacino's casual, like he's just chasing this guy down the freeway. Hey, you want to get a coffee?
And it's got that great like musical number also, the which is something that seems like it would be in Thief too, you know.
It is the second best diner scene in Michael Mann's career, though. That is the one in Thief is better, I think.
Yeah, because it's the long monologue.
It's like it's two people. It's a guy and a woman. Like it's even more raw and into it. Like once again proving my point. It's a moment where two people realize they should be in love with each other. Once again.
Yeah, and that's what James Caan will be like. You know, go down, and he's gone down and remembered as. You know, when there's a tribute to him. Yeah, and Pacino also says like my life is a travesty because I'm on my marriage, my third, because I spent all my life chasing guys like you down. That's my life. And he says like you must have gone after some dipshit crews. I've gone after all types.
It's just nice they're
Yeah,
kind of like, I don't know, respecting each other through hearing just how similar they really are in their lives, and they're also like kind of mad about the
like
same
their
things,
personal lives are both like non-existent, and they only know how to do this.
You see the work-life balance of both of them.
Exactly.
The work part is just a little different.
It's like, Neil, don't you ever go see a movie? Like,
well, and also, like, don't you think they'd be happier with each other? The reverse life, like, it seems like De Niro wants like a marriage and somebody come home to it, and like Al Pacino,
it's almost like Pacino doesn't want those attachments for his job. It's like,
and so like it's such a great, like, I don't know, it's hard to. I remember in one of my classes I took in school, you had to like do a scene, like repurpose a scene from a movie or like that's been done. And I remember someone did this scene from Heat, and I was like, your actors aren't Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. Like, it was just like, don't even try, buddy. Like, it's one of those things where like I would love to see more scenes where two actors like sit down and have like it's kind of shocking that you just don't get just two actors sitting and having 5 to 7 minutes of conversation, like whether it's good or bad. It's like, give me two movie stars having a conversation.
And there aren't any other scenes like this in the movie. Like we say, every other scene is like moving, as we've said. It's all moving. It's like you're in the middle of something. This scene, like they're at the beginning, they're not even speaking at the beginning at the coffee shop, and it's all just basic everyday conversation. And like, this movie isn't an Altman. It isn't like, it's, even though what we're saying about the television influences and how there's so many different characters and how you are both following these two men always not in the same room, this scene basically is saying this movie is still about these two men. And and then like that's why they are brought again together at the end.
Are you guys coffee shop guys or diner guys, late at night coffee?
Love a diner.
Absolutely. Golden Apple in Chicago was a big one of mine. I spent a lot of hours there with my brother Jake talking about movies at any hour, of the night.
Yeah, that's one of the great ones, because like that one, they don't even have the key. They never closes, the Golden Apple.
No, it's a 24-hour one. It has that great like on the corner old school diner. Thing.
Sodium vapor light all around it. It's great.
Never been to the Golden Apple.
Yeah.
Let's check it out. Yeah.
But I can't like this. It feels like that, like, great scene and everything, but I do think that's like how Michael Mann has intimate conversations, is just like after like leaving the editing bay, like, let's go have a real heart, like it's like
that's him at his best. That's him at his most down to earth,
Yeah, his most vulnerable is at a coffee shop. Yeah. I think that might be true. I think
so. They dump all their surveillance first, and I think Neil even like he dumps his car at an airport or something like that where they can't assume surveillance, like just some crazy thing like that.
What can we say about this shootout? Okay. We'll never see it.
Well, first they walk into the bank and he's like, your money's like, don't be a hero, your money's funded by the federal government. I think they have CAR-15s and bulletproof vests, so they are they have like a couple things going for them. They have the fact that the alarms are off. They have the lead on the alarms being off, so they have time, but they're also ready for it. Since they are in downtown Los Angeles doing a heist, they are ready for this to be an all-out shootout. They're basically dressed for warfare at the beginning of the bank heist.
Who are you rooting for at that point?
Who am I rooting for?
Are Pacino and them?
I think I'm always rooting for the people robbing the bank.
Yeah.
Every time. As you are most of the time, I think, in most bank robbery movies. I mean, but obviously we haven't gotten.
You want to see him pull it off,
yeah. And we haven't gotten to the shootout yet, so like, that blurs the line tremendously on who you're rooting for. I don't think I'm rooting for anyone.
No. I think like when the because like I find myself lately have drifted more over to Pacino, and I'm like, I just want him to catch. I want him to win. So like I always root for the bank robbers, but I was like, that's one of the few where I'm like, oh, but I want Pacino to win. I can't let De Niro win.
And there's also another thing I've like, and comes from watching commentary again. There's that scene where Al Pacino is hugging the mother of the dead prostitute that Waingro
Yeah,
kills.
right.
I don't know. I do more recently find an element of humanity to Pacino as Hana, as that he is aware of the basically the atrocities of the world and seen all this pain and seen him like those cocaine scenes. I don't see it as much, but when he is like in this shootout,
Yeah.
especially, and when he says to Neil McCauley, like, if it's between like you and some other guy who you're going to make a widow, brother, you're going down. Like, I see that I do believe, like, okay, maybe he is sometimes a hero. You know what I mean? At least like he has that humanity as a detective.
Yeah, it's one of the rare times I find myself rooting for cops, so I take the chance when I get it, I guess. But yeah, like there is you because I feel like I have more sympathy for Hannah because I know more about him. Neil, the lack of like
right, you
anything.
see the family, the potential
to connect
that
to.
The poor
Right.
man, the friends, like he, like I mean, I granted De Niro has friends too, but like you know, they're all. I mean,
they're all co-workers.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's again, it's really about work.
Which again is like a film director, like the Coen brothers say all their friends are people on set or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you see a home life for like Vincent Hanna when Macaulay, you're just like, I hope he gets to Fiji with the graphic design girl. You know, like...
yeah. I want him to pull this off. I want him to get the money. Like, let's go. You know, and you're also really like, I think that's when the the Allstate guy, Dennis Haysbert's character,
Yeah, the
like
Allstate
like
guy. Yeah,
you're like, I know he's not gonna make. You know, he's doomed
right.
the whole movie,
Yeah,
but you're like,
yeah.
as soon as he's the driver, you're like, oh
yeah,
no.
and that segment, we keep going back to the comparison to television, but like that is very much like
Super
a
television.
tragic wire character or something that you're just, I don't know, like Steve Buscemi in The Sopranos. I don't know if you remember him. You guys remember his part, but like he gets out of jail and he tries to work at a dry cleaner, I believe, for like a Korean guy or something like that, have a real job, be straight, and like it's like way too hard for him. He ends up like beating the guy to death, and it's just like the tragedy of someone not being able to fit into regular society when they get out of prison, you know?
Yeah, no, it's that storyline's heartbreaking, and he's such a great, like, able to give you so much empathy
in those few scenes, right?
Yeah, because I mean, those are the worst. It's not the worst scenes in the movie. They're just like, it does feel him and the Natalie Portman story feels like if I had to cut something, I would have cut both of them. You know,
both
like,
of them.
But like again, I think they both totally work in it. Yeah.
I think since Natalie Portman has nothing to do, I don't know though. Like, all right, now we're getting. I think that like they each maybe towards the end have their own dramatic like you know, the connective tissue, the piece to the puzzle. Like they hold it. Like when him and Charlene have their moment towards the end, it's because you see him bring her. You see like bring her back from her suicide like attempt. Like you see his experience. He's the right man in the right place for that very dark moment. I like that a lot too. But then again, him and Charlene don't need to talk again. Maybe that's just a rehash of their early conversation that we didn't cover, which I really like a lot too, where she kind of just lays it all out what kind of guy he is, and he kind of says like, that's because I need my angst, I preserve it, keeps me sharp. And I don't know, I know you guys, as someone who's in a relationship, I watched that scene, I was like, God, if I said that it would be over. You know?
That is one of those. I also Michael Mann been married for 40 years, which I find very endlessly like funny based on all his movies.
I actually did look up his personal life because I wanted, and all it says on Wikipedia is he has a daughter who's a filmmaker, but I was like, has this guy has as many marriages as Vincent Hanna? I wouldn't be surprised.
He's been married to the same. I've read, there's like, I have like a Taschen book on him, and like we talk about his wife was is a painter. No, but that scene in particular, like I think it's a really great monologue. She like lays out in front of that like angst, you know, like so like, but it's also one of those lines where I watch now that I'm like, this is just the screenwriter writing. Like, this is not how anyone would talk to anyone in any
Right,
situation like this. It's like,
it is.
yeah,
But
it's like,
it's good.
It's good. You
It's
don't.
also good.
Again,
Yeah.
I watched it 100 times before I was like, wait a second, this is fucking odd. Like, this is not how you would have this conversation.
Yeah, she's
like,
way too smart. Yeah,
he turns
exactly.
into like a Greek chorus or something.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's overwritten, possibly. Yeah.
It's just it's way more artificey than the rest of the movie. Like, it's like there's like, like his everything is realistic in that movie, and so like with the scenes that don't, you're like, all right, I don't know.
Right, but I think you could argue that's the diner scene too.
Sure, but like it's grounded enough. Yeah. It needed to happen because the love story had to continue. It had the thematic connection.
I love how you could just like at one scene you could just easily like go in a rabbit hole about another scene. Yeah, that's Heat for you. All right, so eventually they have to shoot their way out of the bank heist. They're in downtown LA, and it is like, I don't know, probably more of a shootout than as I don't know, maybe I don't know if in real life there's you never hear about shootouts like these, but it's so insane, this shootout, and the guns are so loud that I always have to turn my TV down because I'm trying to hear De Niro mumble through the rest of the movie, so I have it up all the way, and then it's just an explosion. But that's what Michael Mann wants. He wants you to hear like how loud guns are, kind of like Nolan a lot of the times. I feel like Nolan has very loud gunshots.
I think Nolan is deaf, is what I've got. Like, I think
yeah, no, like I saw Tenet and it was like post-COVID. I was like, God, the sound design is great, but this movie's fucking loud as shit. Like,
I've heard recently, it came up around Oppenheimer, but he does know, like, he tries not to do any ADR, so that's just the audio recorded, and that makes complete sense. Because that would explain why everything's so
he wants loud. The real performance of, but that's with dialogue, right?
But I'm also just like, but IMAX cameras are extremely loud, and your audio guy's boosting your dial, like, so it makes complete sense. You can't hear any characters, and the score is like, Hans Zimmering you in the head. It's an aesthetic choice now, but I'm just like, I was sort of blown away. But like, to see if I can connect these two stray thoughts. I know for the shootout, they place mics all around the, like, where they were filming, so it's actually the live recording what those gunshots sounded like in the location, and that's
as they were
partly
advancing through the streets. Wow.
Yeah, so there's like this booming and this echo that I don't think you'll ever like get again. Like, John Wick can try all it wants, but like they're not going to spend the time to do that because it's a different time. Yeah, and I fundamentally believe, like, the way Nolan was like, I want to do Heat, I want to do the diner scene, I want to do the T2 truck flip and try to top it. I don't think anyone will ever actually be able to top the shootout, because I think it's like the perfect like
it's one of its own things for sure. And I think what it makes you feel too. I think it's like, it's not like necessarily like enjoyable in the way you would think about like, oh, it's a cool action scene. It's not. It's almost like it's just very upsetting, a lot of it too.
You're rooting for everybody in it, right? So like, the Heat we'll call an action movie, but it's really not. It's a melodrama that has one big action scene that like is incredible, and so like and like everyone's tense, but like that scene has to basically,
the action scenes are thriller scenes, are like crime thriller scenes.
And it's incredible, and it goes on longer, and like, there's all these different layers to it, and like I said, like noticing that he shoots up a barbecue is like such a like there's all these like little story, like the way they have to have like, you like Tom Sizemore enough that he has to grab a kid, so you're okay with him getting shot, right? And like there's like a famous tidbit of like Val Kilmer does the reloading so quickly that they show it to actual Marines.
All right, so this is kind of cool. Val Kilmer does look really cool every time he's shooting a weapon, holding a weapon in this movie.
When he like flips over when they're doing like the exchange, and he flips over on top of things. He just always looks cool.
Every time I like, he's just so smooth with it, and it's because they all did crazy amount of training for it. Val Kilmer could have been John Wick, is what we learned while watching Heat. Like,
in a way.
No, that shootout, it's like one of those things where you're just like, it's such a incredible piece of filmmaking. I don't even know how you even begin to approach it.
Yeah.
Like talking about it, shooting it, to like, you know, like we're gonna occupy downtown LA by the Bonaventure Hotel for a week at least, and just like we're gonna fake a giant gunfight with hundreds of cars getting shot up.
Yeah, and it's not gonna be like hidden at all. And I was watching the commentary for Mission Impossible Fallout, which takes place in there's a scene in Paris where they're shooting a bunch of police, and they actually like kind of hid that from civilians because they're trying to be very respectful to the city of Paris. I don't think Michael Mann was really hiding shit in this, shootout scene at all. Yeah.
It's stunning. Every time I watch it, like I actually sometimes skip over it because I'm just like, I don't even want to begin to think about like, because like at a certain point that scene I realized someone who wants to shoot shootouts and stuff, it's like it's too much. It's too good. It's too
much to live up to.
Basically. It's too impressive. Yeah. It's too, everything is just so well done in it. And you just feel, and also like the fact that it's the crescendo of the story. Like he basically did 2 hours to get you to that point.
Chris Sherrillis gets shot. Sizemore gets killed. He takes Kilmer to Jeremy Piven, who's like his emergency doctor. Everybody, even though this movie's like, about realism, it's about like feeling like everyone's lived in. It feels like everyone has this tremendous backstory. It's real life. Everyone is also somebody, which is also helpful. Like we were saying, like Hank Azaria, Jeremy Piven, Natalie Portman,
Michael Thompson, the little roles. Ted Levine. Like it's like there's not Wes Studi, like everyone.
Which shows like, everyone wants to be in this man world, though. Everyone's very committed to like, we're gonna live in Mann's world here.
And like it's more like he was at his hottest, right? Like the last Mohicans had come out and was like a huge hit and like was up for Oscars, and like he got De Niro and Pacino, and like who doesn't want to be in that movie then? And so like
for sure.
There's really, I mean, Jeremy Piven's not an example of this, but there's like everyone is Xander Berkeley is overqualified to play Ralph. Like it's like it's everyone is overqualified except for Waingro, who's like basically a guy right out of jail, so in his own way, really perfect. Like and
that guy's also really great in this movie. Like
he is, he's terrifying.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this with Oppenheimer actually really quick. Like Oppenheimer is one of those movies where every single person who has a like talking role was always like at least the lead in something, like everyone who speaks was at least is a movie star in Oppenheimer, like there's those big epics like these that is the standard to have any sort of screen time at all.
I mean, Rami Malek is in that movie.
I was just going to bring him up.
And he won an Oscar. I mean, he shouldn't have won an Oscar, but he won a Best Actor. Like, it's not like it's like not that long ago. 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Like, it's.
And so then Kilmer's in, he's in Jeremy Piven's, like, wherever, basement or something, wherever he's fixing him up. And De Niro makes him take
never where you want to end up. You never want to end up in Jeremy Piven's basement.
Never.
Oh God, yeah. Just thought of that. But and De Niro makes him give him his shirt.
That's my favorite bit of that. Yeah.
My daughter gave me the shirt. I don't care who gave it to you, like, just pulls out a wad of cash,
Yeah.
And I love when he's like, hey, we got to get out of here. We're all over the evening news, after everything they did, like, and he goes back to his girl and like she's watched the whole news and he actually expects like that she's going to still be okay with everything. He's like,
that's the most child. That's when you realize he's a child, right? Like, because he just like forces her to stay. Like she looks like a kid being forced to eat their vegetables. Like it's
right. He didn't think it was gonna be a problem at all. He's like, I'm not a salesman. That's all, pretty much it. You just saw him like terrorize everyone on TV. It's probably if this happened like anywhere you are, this is across the country in the news for months. There's like gun debates like everywhere. Like this would be the biggest thing in the world.
It's also, I don't know, like it builds to this crescendo, right? This big shootout. And then it then like scatters, right? Like so like all like these storylines that were all coming to a point have now re-exploded out, right? Like there's like the Jeremy Piven scene, there's the John Voight getting their exit, there's Al Pacino beating up Henry Rollins, there's all these like little scenes that start happening, Waingro checking into a hotel, and you're just like, now it's like it has to like re-center.
All right, so it's basically yeah, it's just wrapping it up. It's like he's like, how long does Neil have? How long do we have with Neil till he's at his out time? Like they're always
Yeah.
talking about Neil's out time, 7 to 8 hours.
Mhm.
Like everyone's so hyper aware of it. They're like breeding. It's like all the connections of where he might go. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, if he's not after Van Zant now, he'll be after Waingro.
Right, right.
And it's trying to trace that. Like Waingro checked into this hotel. Let's get guys there. Let's get a camera there. Maybe Neil
Yeah,
will go
yeah.
for him there. Um, let's get let's get Val Kilmer to try to meet up at the Venice house. Like
Yeah.
let's get her to wave to him.
It also does. That's when it really starts to feel like a TV show where you're like, this should have been 4 episodes. Like this is like too much has happened. Like there's too much. Like you're trying to get done in such a small amount of time.
It's like, yeah, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King lasts 30 minutes or something.
Yeah,
like
you're like, there's just so much, and like you can't give Dennis Haysbert's death anything more than a second with she watches it on TV. You can't like
right. It is. Yeah. See that is so tragic, and she just notices it.
She happens to be off watching TV. Okay, sure.
Yeah, at a bar or something. Yeah.
This is where Al Pacino beats up Henry Rollins. Sure, that by that. Then like De Niro gets the Van Zant. Like
yeah. He's like Van Zant and Encino. In the hills, he climbs up. Climbs up to his place.
The Natalie Portman thing happens, and
right.
And I do buy that. I mean, we get the kick, like you get like him kicking the TV out, going back, like the fact she picked his hotel room, like it does work. There's this weird humanizingness to it. It shouldn't though. Like again, that does feel like the most TV part of the movie, right?
It is something you would see on TV. Yeah, like, oh, this is horrific. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like I think it all pays off, and I'm with you. I think John or you guys are saying like when they like reconnect in the hospital, you almost want them to like figure it out, even though it would be pointless because it's just going to end the same way. But there's this like hope to it, and like it is one of those like when I was watching with my friend, or like, oh, there's another thing that happened to him. That you're like, yeah, it's just like a bunch of his coworkers got shot.
It's like, how much can this guy take? Like, what is he on? Like, this, in order for him to mentally take all this. Yeah.
But it's all leading, like, it does somehow, even with like that giant shootout, and then we have all these splintered storylines.
Right.
We still get to build back. How do you guys feel about like the last, like the hope, like there's the great shot of like De Niro's escaped. He did it. He got out of his aquarium. He's at the open road, and then
I love that. And the score comes back on, and you feel it really is. It's like a taste of freedom, real quick.
Yeah, it's a real beautiful moment.
Yeah, and you really want him to go so bad, but then it goes back to the action is the juice, because he gets that really
he has to win.
That fun look on his face where he's like, oh, but I could also, like, if I'm quick enough, I know what I'm doing. I know I could really quickly kill Waingro.
And there's that beautiful shot it's all the time. It's like where the car goes white because it goes from outside into the tunnel, and like the whole thing, he makes the decision, and the car goes white, and then the world, like, it's like peace, and he's basically like he's not like it's entering heaven, and then he comes back out, and like the score changes. He
has his chance. He chooses not to, and like in that moment, you're like, all right, it's his conscious choice, like
it's
to not get what he wanted.
This is the thing that both drives me nuts, and I love about filmmaking. So like that shot I'm talking about, where it's like the car goes white, they go through the tunnel. It's like such a beautiful, thought through, transcendent shot. Like I was like, oh, it's like a clarity. It's like all these like things to me thematically are hitting that moment. And then I just read that it was an accident, that it was just because they didn't expose the camera of like for night to day going interior, and so it caused that blowout. And you're like, so that amazing, incredible, beautiful moment.
And then post they're like, oh, that works maybe to really what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it says a lot to make sure to grab it and put it in the movie at the right moment. But it's just like one of those things where you're like, I feel artists beat ourselves up for not thinking of everything, and then really you just got to be
sometimes
intuitive.
You don't have
it just happens.
Yeah, just you got to be intuitive. I think is more of the thing. Much like Vincent Hanna, you got to like be reactive and not proactive.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, where do you guys stand on like the whole last 15? So he goes he goes to the hotel, but like he's going to kill Waingro. He gets that success, And then, of course,
he's like, look at me, you know. It's like De Niro is as scary as he's probably ever is on screen, arguably, in that one moment. And I don't know, I kind of like how he knows that, like, no cop kind of notices that he's there, like when he's wearing some like hotel uniform or something like that. But Hannah knows, and so he knows Hannah's coming after him. And Hannah, I like how Vincent Hanna's the only one going after him. Like that's what I like about it.
Yeah, just the two of them.
I always love, right before that, there's that shot of Edie in the car, like POV of like the fire truck, and you're like, you really get the chaos of everything going on. It's such
and she's kind of like there in the car, and she must like have some idea that all this madness is him. And
then they have the chase through the airport.
Chase through the the runways. The runways, which is another great like location, like we're talking about, that just like random industrial crap that they're shooting around.
And like and that thing again, like they're like, so like the end, right? Like we're basically
we're at the end.
I think it's so key to the story. Two things. One, it proves my point that it's a love story because it ends with them holding hands, which I think is really that piece of music. They're both like it's the moment where they like found each other and lost each other, right? But again, it's this whole movie is about like people passing, not getting the timing or getting the time. Like we're all passing. We're
like he said, his dream is running out of time,
right? Which is something like if you were underwater would happen, right? So it's like everyone's in transit, and so it makes beautiful sense that these two souls would meet at an airport as a plane where planes take off. Like it just like makes it like it's like he's exiting his life. He has to stay. He's never gonna feel the same thing, you know, or will he? And like they just keep passing back and forth through these like temporal planes, and there's no more clear example of that than a fucking runway at an airport. Like it's just thousands of people moving back and forth. And so it's just like, I think it's underrated. Every time I watch Heat, I sometimes will like, you know, after the shootout, I'll sort of stop and maybe not finish it, or I'll watch that end. Always gets me because I just think it's such a beautiful thematic tie to put it at like they have like I don't like that's so brilliant to me to
it definitely nails it. The shot of him like standing over De Niro at the end holding his hand, and I'm not going back line, and then the Tangerine Dream song coming in.
It's Moby, my friend. It's Moby.
Yeah, I thought it was Moby.
Oh, Moby. Okay. That song, anyways, is great. For this moment. Yeah,
it's that final scene. Just Pacino just standing still, staring off. You see his back, and then De Niro's just bloody, and
it's definitely where you're just like masterpiece right there. You know, pretty much every time.
Yeah, and again, it ends like with daylight coming up. You're like, okay, I can go back outside. I'm done watching Heat.
It's like, all right, they stayed up all night again.
They did it. Like, but it's just such like I sent the image in the chat. Like, it's such a fucking gorgeous, sweet, romantic. Like, it hammers home to me that like not only is Heat is not an action movie, it's a melodrama, but it's also that it's a love story between like true melodramas between two men. That's such a romantic end. Like. It's something like out of the 40s about a woman who dies of some disease and the man holds her hand. It's like they got on a boat.
It's tragic.
Like, it's just to have that end when you're like, you got to see Heat. It's this action movie. It's so gives you all that stuff, but also is just like this completely other swerve. And I think it's the swerve that makes it so great.
And Justin wrapped it up the movie pretty beautifully.
I gotta go eat. I mean, that's where I'm at. I was like, I'm hungry.
That's what happens a lot. All right, well, so that's Heat, everyone. I hope that we did it justice. I hope that we went in, as I know you can always go endless rabbit holes in depth, but we'd be here for multiple days. Thanks for coming on, Justin.
Thanks, Justin.
Great.
Thanks for having me, guys. Anytime you want to talk Michael Mann or Christopher Nolan, I'm in.
That's the subgenre we've cornered ourselves into. Yeah, definitely.